This is Leila from My RA Lawyer, and I am so excited to talk to you about the 10 things you should know if you are under state or federal securities investigation. Yes, I know it's not fun to get that little pesky letter or that phone call from your state regulator, the SEC or FINRA, and know that you are under investigation. Not cool, not fun, especially if you're getting it at a time that you are looking for new employment. And that is why the first thing you need to do is hire an attorney. The people who are bringing these claims against you, the people who are investigating you, they are attorneys. So you want someone, one of their own kind, representing you and making sure your interests are protected during this investigation process. The second thing you should know is that you will receive formal requests for information and documentation. And it's not going to be one, it's not going to be two, it could be 3, 4, or more requests for information. Every time you respond, your responses may prompt other questions. So be careful about responding to just what's requested, to responding to just what's asked. Try to control the verbal diarrhea and keep it succinct. So you will be getting those requests for information and documentation. The third thing you should know if you're under investigation is that you can be asked to give formal testimony under oath. So you want to make sure you're not going in to that without counsel present. Counsel is going to be able to object to certain questions. They're going to be able to ask the regulator to define the scope or limit the scope of the question. In other words, they are going to protect you, and they're going to make sure that the regulator is not taking advantage of the deposition to take you down a rabbit hole you were not prepared for. So know that they can ask you to come in for formal testimony under oath, and know that if you're going to do that, do not go it alone. Have counsel present with you. The fourth thing you should know if you're under investigation is that not only are you getting requests for information and documentation, the regulators are also asking other parties for information and documentation. This could be your current employer, your former employer. This could be other advisors, clients, present or past. They're not just relying on what you give them. They're trying to get the full story. So they are going to other parties and requesting information as well. And that means they could also be issuing subpoenas to companies like banks, custodians. So keep in mind that you want to be as honest and truthful as possible during your responses. Even if that means you say, I don't know, I don't recall, I don't have that information. The fifth thing you should know is that an investigation is just an investigation. At the end of the investigation, you could get a letter that says, hey, don't do that again. Or maybe they say, hey, we might let this one go. Just remember, this is the kind of behavior we don't really want to see. Or, as part of the initial investigation, they may determine that there is some serious wrongdoing that happened, and they may escalate the investigation to enforcement. So, remember, an investigation is an investigation. It doesn't necessarily mean you are going to be charged. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be fined or suspended or barred from the industry. But if you aren't careful, it could end up there. So make sure you're not going through this process alone. Make sure your attorney's present with you. The sixth thing you should know if you're currently under investigation is that a lot of these investigations arise out of routine examinations. Yes, believe it or not, your routine FINRA exam or RA exam may lead to an investigation or enforcement action. So if you're trying to prevent future investigations, then now is the time to take a look at your firm's compliance and what you can do to improve your processes, root out the toxicity in your business so that you can make sure you don't come under investigation in the future. The seventh thing you should know if you're under investigation: they take time. Your examiner or the regulator that is doing the investigation, they may send you a request with 30 things that they're requesting and then ghost you like your bad ex-boyfriend for 2 months. It's okay. That's how they do it. But they'll be back, they'll communicate, but it takes time. You have to keep in mind these regulators are managing multiple investigations, and oftentimes, especially when you're looking at state securities commission, there's only 1, 2, maybe 3 people that are actually handling all the investigations for the state. So expect this to take time. It can take over a year. And if it gets pushed up to enforcement, it can take even longer. So keep this in mind if you found out you're currently under investigation. The eighth thing that you should know if you've been named in an investigation is that they're not yet a disclosable event. They're an investigation. There's been no finding of wrongdoing. So until there is such a finding or you have been formally charged, this is not a disclosable event on your Form U4. So you can rest easy that a client, a potential new employer, they're not necessarily going to see that you are part of this investigation, which is why it's so important. We want to make sure that investigation ends as just an investigation found in your favor and not a formal enforcement action. So going back to the number 1 thing you should know, make sure you have counsel with you. The 9th thing you should know if you've been named in an investigation is that once there is a formal finding and you've been formally charged, that's a disclosable event on your U4. And keep in mind, those are not generally disclosures that can be expunged. So do whatever you can to answer the questions and show that there isn't wrongdoing, because you don't want to end up in a position where you have this permanent red mark on your Form U4. And the 10th and final thing you should know if you've been named in an investigation is that having formal charges brought against you, findings of wrongdoing, fines, potential suspensions or bars from the industry, this makes it more difficult for you to be employed, more difficult for you to get registered in other states, and it makes it more difficult for you to bring on quality clients. So we want to make sure you are doing what you can to avoid getting into an investigation in the first place. But if you're already in one, we want to make sure you have counsel who will help mitigate any potential issues for you from the word go, not once it's become an enforcement action and you've missed the opportunity to convince the investigator otherwise. This can be a bad outcome for you. So we want to make sure we're doing everything we can at the beginning of the investigation, not at the end. Listen, I know it's not fun. I deal with investigations all the time. The attorneys on our staff deal with investigations all the time. It's like drinking a cup of coffee for us. But for you, it's your first time. It's frightening, it's scary, it's keeping you up at night, it's causing you worry, you're taking it home to your family. So make sure you're doing what you can to get rid of it. And the first place you should be starting is getting qualified counsel to help. And if that's where you are and you're looking for that qualified counsel, give us a call today, 770-462-2118. We know this is time sensitive and we'll get you in front of an attorney today. So give us a call. That number again is 770-462-2118.